Hello, I'm Rex Childhouse, and because things on the internet seem to lose their date references pretty easily, today is Tuesday, December 19th, 2023. On Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023, we visited the Mechanized Museum of the Marine Corps on Camp Pendleton. If you're going to go there, you're going to have to get access to a secure military installation. There is on their homepage a contact number and a contact email. I will tell you, I sent an email off to one of the emails listed for the museum 3 or 4 days ago. I haven't gotten an acknowledgement or an answer, and we didn't phone the number. I'm retired military. I get on Camp Pendleton without a problem. We spent probably 2 to 2.5 hours there. A really good museum. There was nobody there when we showed up, and nobody asked any questions. The signage at the museum is pretty darn good. A couple of things don't have signs, and I wish they did. I was trying to solve some issues. I like knowing what's in a museum. And I believe it was a Lance Corporal and a Corporal showed up, along with school, some school kids out of Arizona, and I have nothing against kids visiting a museum. These kids just probably 50 or so just literally took over the museum, and we just decided to call it quits. I would have loved to ask some questions. But it wasn't worth it. They were inundated with the kids' questions. I figured they were more important. So here's our trip to the Mechanized Museum of the Marine Corps at Camp Pendleton. It was interesting. Quite honestly, I wouldn't mind going back. I will tell you, it's cross country. Once you get inside the gate, it feels like you're driving 85 miles to get to the museum. The museum's a good distance away from the gate. Okay, so let's get on with the tour. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. We checked the museum's homepage and its published hours, and here's a photo of it. We showed up at the museum within the published hours, and this is a picture of the outside of the building as well. It's a former warehouse, obviously. Good utilization of floor space. There was nobody there. I mean, nobody there. We walked in, there was no attendant, there was no docent, there was nothing. And we had probably the first 90 minutes to ourselves, and then these 1 or 2 school buses from Arizona showed up, and at that time a corporal and lance corporal, I believe they were, showed up to escort those through. And I was going to go back and photograph the signs about Camp Pendleton and its history, which are at the end of this video, and do a much better job of getting them so that I could read them later. Unfortunately, with the kids around, we just bailed. And I have nothing against children, kids at museums. This group was a bit loud. They were teenagers, and that's okay. The museum is made for a multitude of people. And here's a couple of the brochures and items that you can see at the museum, and just an overview, quick shots of what the interior of the museum looks like. The very first thing you find when you walk into the museum, past a desk, and off to the left is this 1917 Ford Model T ambulance, and it gives you the specs on it, and the museum has got good signage on the vast majority of their displays, kind of lacking on a couple of them. In the narrative for this, it talks about the fact that Ernest Hemingway and Walt Disney were both ambulance drivers with the Red Cross. They were not in the U.S. military. They were with the Red Cross doing the volunteer work. And the narrative talks about how they got it. This is a beautifully restored vehicle. After visiting the museum, bringing our photos back home, I tried to group them. So we're going to start out with the light stuff and the weasel. I've always loved to buy a weasel and amphibious Jeep. The signage, as I said, with these is where they've got it is really good. A few of them are lacking. I've asked the museum via email for some information on the stuff I'm going to show you because I don't have it. I didn't see any signage or explanation. I haven't gotten an answer back. Weasel, just kind of a fun vehicle. Lots of information about the Jeep and a lot of reiterations of it as it went through its adoption. And the Jeep, the word Jeep, J-E-E-P, did not come from the olive oil Popeye cartoon where Jeep, G-E-E-P, was this alien that came in, big nose, blob body guy. The vehicle was general purpose, and it's showing up here as multi-purpose, but it was general purpose, quarter-ton vehicle, quarter-ton, 500 pounds. So when you put 3 combatants in it, technically you've overloaded it. Really versatile vehicle. Numerous reiterations as time went on from the original Willys design, and pretty much the production was taken away from Willys, and the vehicles were produced in large by other people. And I'm just going to let you scroll through some of these. Designed in the early 1940s by Willys and utilized all the way into the late 1980s, so it was close to a perfect design, used in many configurations. The Mighty Mite, American Motors Corporation, 1959-1962, so it didn't have a real long life, but it is a unusual looking version of a Jeep. Over the years, I've wanted to buy a number of different military vehicles for whatever reason, and the Mechanical Mule was one of them. It just looks neat to have this thing that looks like it'll go just about anywhere. I didn't find any signage for this Jeep, but it's a basic utility truck that's just been modified for ambulance purposes, which was kind of cool. And parked nearby was this Dodge van, which I remember the recruiters driving up to my high school in vehicles like this. And then this, what looks like a Chevy utility truck, probably a repair truck, and they were just parked in the museum, no signage. We're into the era of the Humvee, which is the High Mobility Multi-Purpose Wheel Vehicle, just abbreviated as Humvee, and like the Jeep, it has been put into numerous configurations. I've clustered them all together here. You can put missiles on them, you can put machine guns on them, you can put all sorts of stuff on them, you can use them for all sorts of purposes. And there's a feature here that when I was in Washington DC, they talked about what this feature was going to do, and I'm going to show it to you. This is the rear axle of a real Hummer and Humvee, and it's also the rear axle assembly for the Hummer, the original Hummer, not the Hummer 2, the Hummer 3. Hummer 2, Hummer 3 are basically Chevy Suburbans, and they have standard differentials. I was in Washington, D.C., 1985-87, when this vehicle was being procured, designed, whatever, and was told that this vehicle is actually designed to be able to drive over someone without injuring them, protect the corpsman servicing the injured combatant behind the vehicle, which would be a shield, and then they could load the guy into the back of the vehicle and take him away. The other thing is ground clearance. If the four-wheel guys will tell you that they beach these things, they beach their four-wheel drive vehicles on the banjo housing of the differentials, and this resolves that issue. The original Humvee military vehicle is the Humvee, civilian vehicle is the Hummer. The original military Humvee was an outgrowth of the Jeep, and it was not armored. And as you watch the progression of this, as we moved into Desert Storm with the Humvee, and then we moved into Afghanistan and back into Iraq, where we were fighting numerous other issues, you'll see the Humvee, get armorized, and now it is a heavily armored vehicle, and every one of those pounds reduces its performance. Referred to as the Duck because of its designation, DUKW means different things as it goes along. D says it's a 42 model, U is utility, K is all-wheel drive, W is dual rear wheels. I'm reading the narrative. This is one of those vehicles you kind of look at and say, wow, this is kind of cool. It's basically a Deuce and a half with a body around it so it'll float, because if you displace water with less weight, the vehicle floats. Moving off into heavier vehicles, the M3A1 Scout Recon car, 1939 to 1944 for production, and 6-cylinder gas engines running along the lines. Interesting vehicle, and this is some of the stuff you'll see in World War II movies. This Desert Storm flatbed truck is a outgrowth of the World War II Deuce and a half, and a lot of features in here incorporated into it. No signage for this truck, so I'm just guessing it was Desert Storm era. I think I saw these guys running around airports and stuff while I was out in Desert Storm. And then following that is another general purpose utility vehicle, probably mid 1940s into Korean War era. Signage I like, the M24 International Rocket Truck. It talks about it was only used in the Pacific Theater, wasn't really good in the jungles, and usually worked from places like the beach, played a really critical role in Iwo Jima. I've been to Iwo Jima. Mount Suribachi is just a pimple on the island. The island's not that big. To read the history of what happened there is and then see its actual size is amazing. One of the liabilities of the vehicle was it wasn't good in the jungles, and when it was on the beach and firing, blew up a lot of sand, a lot of dust, a lot of dirt, and gave the artillery people places to shoot at. No matter what you call it, M16A1 half-track quad 50, multi-gun motor carrier, just straight half-track, whatever. This vehicle was World War II and Korean War, and had a reputation for being mean and tough. And the quad 50s on top, M2 Browning machine guns, 50 caliber Browning machine guns, would be an effective weapon against just about anything, like the sign says, except heavy armor. And on the back of it, it looks like a Briggs & Stratton 2.5 horsepower engine, probably powered it for electrically controlled operations. And then a whole bunch of levers and knobs in the and not many knobs in the cab, so it was probably a anti-millennial auto theft device. And they did have a sense of humor. One of the vehicles without any information, no signage. However, it's wearing a M2 50 caliber Browning machine gun, so it was a manpower machine. Looks like it was World War II Korean War vintage. The military, in accomplishing its mission, has to do a lot of things. So here is a compressor truck, and they give you the codes for what those CCKW things all stand for. So according to the signage, it says C means it was designed in 1941. The second C is conventional cab, K is all-wheel drive, and W is dual-powered rear axles, so one of them is not just an add-on. Comment on here where it says World War numeral 2. That's actually incorrect. Roman numeral 2, WW, quote-unquote, II, or Second World War is proper. World War II in Arabic is considered improper in normal English. Lots of configurations for the Deuce and a half, which was quote-unquote 2.5 ton truck, which carried a lot more than that. This particular one seemed to emphasize the M250 caliber Browning machine gun, which was a fantastic weapon. And it's mounted on a traversing ring, so it'll go 360 degrees and carry itself. And this is just one of the many configurations of the Deuce and a half. And in its designation M54A2C 5-ton truck, they're probably getting closer to the truth, but I will tell you, I would assume the troops loaded with more than 5 tons of cargo more often than not. Sometimes there are things that are just ugly and effective. The 1947 LVT A5 Mod 2, so service year is 1941 to 1945. This thing was built in 1947, which kind of interesting. So anyways, the script talks about it being used throughout the Pacific War era and range, and that it was used in the Clint Eastwood films of Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. So this particular one has a distinct, proud history. 2 more big trucks at the museum without any signage, semi-trailer truck, obviously full-wheel drive, so it can go just about anywhere it needs to go. And most of the vehicles in the museum were up on jack stands, which was interesting, keeps the tires from deflating. Some museums fill their tires with hard rubber compound. And then another version, outgrowth of a Deuce and a half, probably a 5 to 10 ton capacity truck or better, was sitting there. The XM 759 marginal train vehicle, it was an experimental, it was a test, didn't work out. It looks extremely interesting. Understanding that it is a test bed, can we prove the concept, which they didn't, but it does look like it could do it. But having the drive chains on the outside would have to be moved on the production models. I'm making assumptions, but you need to keep the rigidity of the carriages in there too. So interesting vehicle. Another one of the interesting vehicles at the museum, and there's obviously several, the M973A1 small unit support vehicle, Humvee, and made in Sweden and brought in by BAE Systems, which is a big military contractor. And the U.S. militaries are powered by Mercedes-Benz. The ones in other countries are often powered, evidently, by the Signage by Ford V6 engines. But this is primarily, looks like primarily a cold weather, operate over snow, black ice, whatever else, and it looks cool. Maybe I'd like to buy one for $2.5 million. Another vehicle without signage, and another vehicle that's never going to win an award for looks. But notice the front, the bow has skid bars on it, so that if it does meet something, it'll reduce the impact. And it looks like it has car-type tires between the tracks, which would add to its buoyancy and probably add some degree of comfort to the ride. Interesting vehicle, obviously making an assumption, amphibious and designed for all sorts of terrain. Another vehicle that design is based on need and effectiveness, not on appearance, so you won't find this on too many new car showroom floors. The M792 Gamma Goat, called the Goat because of its mountainous terrain capability, and obviously used in Vietnam because that's a twin-engine CH-53 that's lifting it up in that photo. With the military's diverse missions, this truck fits right in. Quite honestly, it looks like it's built overseas, designed overseas, just from its general appearance, but it has a bucket that it can probably bring all the way over the top and dump in its own bed, as well as a backhoe behind it. So quite a utility construction support vehicle. Another one of the vehicles without any signage on it at all. This one's wearing a M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun, so it goes into hostile territories. Looks like it's fairly heavily armored, and it is most likely all-wheel powered. I don't think I got a good photo of the back end of this thing to prove that it's all-wheel powered, but I'm just making an assumption. And it looks like it can handle just about any terrain, and probably handle most loads the Marine Corps could burden it with. Continuing with special usage vehicles and trucks, the mine detection vehicle, referred to as the Husky. You look at it, it is specifically designed to go out and find the mines, and if it happens to be blown up, so to speak, it is designed to deflect the blast and protect the occupant. Probably not a job a whole lot of, well, they're Marines, probably a job a fair amount of Marines would actually apply for. Desert Storm, Desert Shield Desert Storm was a 1990, 91, 92 event, and we were fighting somewhat conventional desert warfare. As we moved into the war on terrorism against Iraq and Afghanistan, things changed, and we started fighting against a whole lot of other things. And these next vehicles show some of the development trying to protect our troops from IEDs, from landmines, whatever else, as the concept of war changed. For the last vehicles in this run, we're going to shift after this one. This was outside on a floating bridge section, and there's a combat support vessel sitting alongside of it to move the dock around if it ever floods. And again, no signage on what this is, but it is obviously amphibious. This monument to the 1st Marine World War II veterans is a M4 Sherman tank, and some tanker uniforms and other support displays. And let me make this clear, I'm a retired naval officer, I'm a naval aviator, I didn't work with the ground pounders. But the documentation says the Commandant of the Marine Corps has said the Marines are going to get rid of their tanks. Personally, to be a faster, more mobile force, I think that's a mistake, because anytime you have to go outside your organization to get support like Army tanks, there's just red tape involved. The M50A1 Ontas tank destroyer, 6 106 millimeter recoilless rifle rounds mounted on this thing, 30 caliber machine gun to do the close-in work, used in the Dominican Republic in 56 for the only time it was there for its real purpose, used in Vietnam, and was evidently quite a fearsome machine in Vietnam. Moving into artillery pieces, the M107 175 millimeter self-propelled howitzer. So this is a massive weapon, and on the back of it, this dozer blade is you dig that into the ground so that when the weapon goes off, the self-propelled the platform doesn't roll backwards 85 feet. The more the platform rolls back, the shorter the distance the weapon fires. That takes, you have an energy issue. Does the energy go to the shell, or does the energy go to moving the platform? This projectile was sitting in a museum. There was no signage. I can assume it's a 175 millimeter round that the judge would fire. I can't tell you for sure. There are 2 artillery pieces shown in this backdrop of Vietnam, and there's an OV-10 Bronco in the overhead doing forward air control, probably for these guys. The M2A2 105 millimeter howitzer, and then the M114A1 155 millimeter howitzer, which both of them served in Vietnam. In reading the signage for this, the 114A1 was dropped out of service for an update, a new model, but this is where it works to have organic support. The infantry needs artillery. They don't have to call the Army, get approval from the Army. They call their own guys, their own Marines, and this is why I think the Marines are losing when they give up their tanks. They're going to have to call somebody else to get tank support instead of their own buddies. Another artillery piece and truck towing it without any information. I'm just assuming this is a 155. I have no idea at all. But looking at it and just using common sense, because it only has 2 tires to pull it, it's probably less than 18,000 pounds. And it looks like long range. I think I looked for a data plate and didn't find one on either the truck or the cannon. And I assume that's a quote-unquote modern howitzer. The recoilless rifle is an interesting invention. I do not fully understand it, but I have an idea of how it works. It's basically a rocket shell. Since it has no contained breech, the answer is you get this massive blast out of the back end of the weapon, but you can put it on something like a Jeep, a small vehicle, mount it on the ground, and you aren't going to get a whole lot of recoil in the weapon itself. 2 different Kawasaki motorcycles, one the M1030 250cc, and then you have the M103 KLR 650 Kawasaki, and if you read the signage you find out they were highly modified. These guys can do multi-fuel, so they can burn, at least one of them can burn JP and diesel and whatever else it wants. The answer is, how do you accomplish the military mission? With a multitude of vehicles. We saw these guys during Desert Storm when we landed in some of the forward airfields that we were supporting on our cargo missions. We saw these guys training, quote-unquote, keeping proficient. That's another word for having fun at the government's expense. But you need to stay proficient with the vehicles you're operating, and these guys were running around. They had machine guns mounted to them. They had rockets mounted to them, whatever. Really versatile. Basically, it's a dune buggy. If you're familiar with military training, with Marine training, improvise, adapt, adjust, respond, react, and the M3A4 heavy machine gun cart, this thing's wearing a 30 caliber water-cooled machine gun, which is a heavy gun, and you can tow it around and probably fire it off that weapon, off that trailer. It's on display at the museum, the ammunition trailer, whatever else. And then there was this big green box, and I'm showing you the big green box because of the information that they put on the big green box. It's an electronic service container, so you put things that need to be cooled, your computers and radios and whatever else. But the data tags tell you how to attach it to a truck or how to lift it with a helicopter. I've operated numerous pieces of heavy equipment, some 977, 955 track excavators, tracked bucket loaders, whatever you want to call them, 950 swivel hip bucket loader. When I see things in particular, T-Rex, Dinosaur Daddy, Dinosaur Grandpa, whatever, then I'm interested in. Here's this T-Rex dozer sitting in the museum. And if you watch some of the Rain movies, Clint Eastwood's, don't remember the name of it, where he takes the guys in to save the medical students in Grenada, they abscond with a bulldozer to support their mission. Improvise, adapt, adjust, respond, react. The only reason I know that this is a Cleveland 1947 trencher is I think it was one of the items that was listed, that was identified on the brochures. I do know that the Marines need to do a fair amount of construction, and this would be an instrument that would allow them to do it. I'm guessing this is kind of a mix of World War II uniforms. He's carrying 1903 Springfield 30 caliber, which is bolt action, a very, very dependable weapon. They were used during World War II. They were fantastic sniper weapons. The ammo boxes are 30 calibers. One of them says bandoleros, or I think they both say clips and bandoleros, so they might be for supporting the M1 service rifle Grand or the 1903, who knows. And an item of, well, how do you tell the ranks of the Marines? Because I could never keep them straight. Kind of cleaning up they had a couple of engine cutaways. This is a straight 6, and then they had this V8, which I think is a diesel, but don't hold me to that, and this road sign for the city of Hue in Vietnam. Somebody brought home a souvenir. The ANPRC 77 portable radio goes into Vietnam as technology improves, everything improves. The radio's improved. I carried a PRC 63 and then a PRC 90 in my survival vest. Desert let me try to get this straight. Desert 1, which was the Iranian hostage crisis rescue attempt that came into, was an utter failure. One of the helicopters hit the tail of C-130. People died out in the middle of the desert. One of the things that came up was the U.S. military couldn't talk to each other. Not only did we use different frequencies, we used different vocabularies, whatever else, so we tried to standardize that and get everybody up on the same frequencies. I had initially had this as unidentified, and I was looking at the photo to do the video and things that just link up. This is a tube-launched, optically tracked, wire-guided missile, a tow missile, and it's mounted on that Desert Humvee behind it. And you can see how various weapons get adapted for various purposes. So now I know what this is. There was no signage for it at the museum. Some interesting items around the museum. Obviously, this is one of those, where did this come from, which is kind of cool. It was a cannon captured in Nicaragua in 1912 and donated to the museum. Combat support boat. This was outside the museum in the yard. There was no signage for it. I did get a picture of the data plate, and it's pushing that floating bridge section with that other unidentified amphibious vehicle. I love trains. I love anything to do with trains. I love anything mechanical, airplanes, boats, whatever. And this is a speeder from the Santa Fe Railroad that was on display. And in the back of the museum is the switch engine, no ID. I have no idea what make this thing is because so many different companies made these types of switch engines. This is an example of the signage throughout the museum associated with the establishment of Camp Pendleton, who it's named after, and the events of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Unfortunately, I don't have good pictures of them. My intent was to get the mechanical stuff, the tanks, the trucks, the Jeeps, the Humvees, whatever else, photographed, and then come back and get these. And then the school group showed up, and they pretty much took over the museum, and we gave up at that point. Thanks for watching. It's worth it. We enjoyed it. Maybe we'll get a chance to go back. It was it was cool. It really was. I love machines. So when we found this place, we just, both of us, you see my wife in the photos, she's looking at a lot of this stuff. This stuff was cool. In summary, and I will mention it in the introduction, it is on Camp Pendleton in near Oceanside, California. San Diego County. It is a secure facility. You need to call ahead, make reservations, make sure you can get in unless you have a military ID card to get through security. And we spent probably 2 to 2.5 hours there. I took over 260 total photos. I've really enjoyed it. I am missing signage on a couple of the things because I want to know what everything is, and that's just me. Hope you enjoyed the tour. We enjoyed the tour, and thanks for watching.